Every day the boy could feel the cold wind biting at his skin, but it wasn't as cold as the fear in his heart. He was used to the streets now. It had been months, maybe even longer, since he and his mother had lost their home. The harsh reality of living on the streets had become his new normal, and he had learned how to survive, how to push through the pain, how to ignore the hunger, and how to avoid the sharp looks of strangers who didn't even notice him. He had lost count of how many times he had tried to help his mother, to make sure she ate something, to keep her warm, but no matter how hard he tried, nothing seemed to change. Her sickness had only gotten worse. It wasn't just the cold or the hunger. It was something much deeper, something he couldn't fix on his own. She coughed weakly, her body trembling in the old, ragged blanket that barely kept her warm at night. Her face was pale and her eyes had lost the spark they once had. The boy didn't know much about illness, but he could tell something was wrong. She wasn't getting better. Every time he looked at her, a heavy feeling settled in his chest. She had been his everything. She had been his protector, his teacher, his comfort when the world seemed too harsh. Now it seemed like she was fading away, slipping through his fingers, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't save her. But there was one thing he could still do: sing. It wasn't much, but it was the only thing he had left to offer. He had learned to sing when he was very young. Even as a blind child, he had an ear for music. His mother would sit beside him and play her old guitar while he tried to match the melody with his voice. He remembered how she would smile at him, her face lighting up with pride as he sang the songs she loved. Those were the days before everything changed, before they had to leave their home, before they ended up on these unforgiving streets. Now his singing was all he had. It wasn't just a way to pass the time. It was his way of surviving. He would sit on the cold sidewalk near a busy street corner, his guitar resting on his knee, his fingers brushing against the strings as he sang. People passed by, some with their heads down, others with their eyes glued to their phones, ignoring the boy completely. But some stopped. Some tossed a few coins into his guitar case or gave him a kind word. It wasn't much, but it was something. He didn't sing for the money, though. He didn't even sing for the attention. He sang for his mother. Every note, every word was a plea, a silent cry for help. He sang because he didn't know what else to do. He sang because he believed deep down that maybe, just maybe, someone would hear him and offer help. Or at least offer some relief for his sick mother. Every coin tossed in his direction felt like a small victory. A tiny step toward getting the money he needed for her treatment. But it was never enough. His mother's condition had worsened in the past few weeks. She wasn't getting out of bed anymore. The coughs had become more violent, her body constantly shivering no matter how many layers of clothing she wore. He had tried to get her to drink water, to eat something, but she could barely keep anything down. He had found a few old empty bottles in the alleyway behind the building where they stayed at night, and filled them with water from a public fountain. But even that felt like too little. She needed medicine. She needed a doctor. She needed something he couldn't give her. As he sang on the corner, he wondered if his voice would ever be enough to make a difference. He closed his eyes, letting the melody flow through him, trying to forget about the fear and the worry that gnawed at him every day. If only he could make enough money, he thought. If only he could get her the medicine she needed, but it seemed like the world was passing him by. The people on the street would glance at him for a moment, then turn away, continuing on with their busy lives. The boy didn't expect them to stop, but every time someone walked past, it felt like a reminder of how alone he really was. No one seemed to care, not about him, and certainly not about his mother. And yet he kept singing. Because what else could he do? It was late in the afternoon when the boy finished another song, his throat sore from hours of singing. He stopped for a moment to take a breath, his fingers resting on the strings of his guitar. His stomach growled in protest. It had been hours since he had eaten, and there was nothing to eat in his bag. He couldn't even remember the last time he'd had a proper meal. The only thing that seemed to keep him going was the hope that one day, things would change, that someone would stop and offer the help they so desperately needed. Just as he was about to start another song, he felt a soft tap on his shoulder. He tensed, startled by the sudden contact, and turned his head, hoping to find someone who might have noticed him. There was a man standing there looking down at him. He was dressed in a suit, his clothes clean and neat. He didn't look like someone who would usually stop on the street, especially not to talk to a blind, homeless boy like him. But here he was, looking down at the boy with a gentle expression on his face. "Hey, kid," the man said, his voice kind. "I've been listening to you sing for a while now. You've got a really beautiful voice." The boy blinked, unsure if he had heard the man correctly. Most people didn't stop to talk to him, especially not people dressed like this man. He had a deep voice, one that seemed warm and genuine, not like the voices of others who had passed by. "Thank you," the boy replied softly, unsure of what else to say. The man squatted down in front of him, carefully avoiding the guitar case, and studied the boy's face. "You know, I can't help but wonder," the man began slowly, "what you're doing here. You're so young. Why are you out here on the streets?" The boy hesitated for a moment but then decided to speak. There was something about the man's presence that made him feel safe. Maybe it was the kindness in his eyes, or maybe it was just that he was so tired of holding everything inside. "My mother is sick," the boy said quietly. "I'm trying to make enough money to get her help. I can't do it by myself." The man nodded, his expression softening. "I'm really sorry to hear that, kid," he said. "What's your name?" The boy paused. He wasn't used to sharing his name. Most people didn't care enough to ask. I don't have a name that people remember," he said, his voice trailing off. "But it doesn't matter." The man gave him a reassuring smile. "It matters to me," he said. "I want to help. Where's your mom?" The boy hesitated, his heart pounding. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know if this man would actually help, or if he was just another person passing by offering empty words. But something in the man's eyes told him this time might be different. With a deep breath, the boy stood up, carefully slinging his guitar over his shoulder. "She's not far," he said. "Follow me." And with that, the two of them walked through the busy streets, the boy's heart pounding in his chest, unsure of what would happen next, but hoping, just hoping, that this time, maybe someone truly cared. The boy led the man down the street, his footsteps slow and careful. His hands gripped the strap of his guitar tightly, almost as if he was afraid that someone would snatch it away. The bustling city around them seemed to blur as they walked, the sounds of cars and chatter fading into the background. For the boy, everything outside of his mother's illness and the music he created had become distant, a world he no longer had much to do with. His mind was consumed by one thought: would this man actually help? The stranger followed quietly, not saying a word, as they turned down an alleyway. It was a part of the city few people ever ventured through, dark and narrow, with litter scattered across the ground. The air felt colder here, the walls on either side closing in like silent witnesses to their passing. When they reached the end of the alley, the boy stopped in front of an old crumbling building. It wasn't much of a shelter, just a small run-down room with peeling paint and broken windows. It wasn't much compared to the homes most people had, but it was the only place they could call home. The boy hesitated for a moment, his heart racing before he pushed open the door and stepped inside. The smell hit him first: stale air, damp walls, and the faint scent of illness. It was a place that had seen better days, and those days seemed like they were long gone. The boy's mother was lying on a mattress in the corner of the room, wrapped in a thin blanket. She barely moved, her breathing shallow and uneven. She looked smaller than the boy remembered, her frail body sinking deeper into the mattress as if it was trying to disappear. The boy didn't speak as he walked over to her. He simply set down his guitar on the floor beside her and knelt down by the mattress. Gently, he reached out and touched his mother's hand. Her skin was cold, her fingers weak in his grasp. "Mama," he whispered softly, trying not to let his voice break. "I brought someone to help." His mother stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she didn't seem to recognize the boy, as if the illness had clouded her mind. But then her eyes settled on him and she gave a faint, tired smile. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely a whisper. You're still singing?" The boy nodded. "I'll keep singing, Mama, I promised you." The man stood at the door, watching quietly. He had said little since entering the room, but his gaze never left the mother and son. There was something in his expression, something between concern and sympathy, but it was more than that. The boy could tell the stranger wasn't just pitying them. He was genuinely moved, even if he wasn't showing it on his face. After a long pause, the man stepped forward and approached the mattress. He crouched down next to the boy and looked at the sick woman. "I'm really sorry to see you like this," he said quietly. "I know it's hard, but I can help." The boy's heart skipped a beat. Could this really be happening? A stranger offering help so freely, without asking for anything in return. It felt surreal, almost like a dream. But the man's voice was calm and steady, and there was something about him that felt trustworthy, genuine. The mother blinked slowly, trying to focus on the man. She seemed confused, her illness clouding her thoughts. But she managed to nod, her voice barely audible. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes closing again as if she didn't have the strength to stay awake much longer. The boy looked at the man, his eyes wide with uncertainty. "Can you really help her?" he asked, his voice trembling. She's been getting worse. I don't know what to do anymore." The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "I can arrange for a doctor to come and see her," he said, his voice confident. "They'll know what to do. But first I need to get her to a hospital. I'll make sure she gets the care she needs." The boy felt a rush of emotions all at once. Relief, hope, but also disbelief. It was hard to wrap his mind around the idea that someone, a complete stranger, was willing to help. The streets had taught him to expect nothing from anyone, to survive on his own. But here was this man offering help without hesitation. "Thank you," the boy whispered, his voice breaking. He didn't know what else to say. There were no words big enough to express how grateful he felt. The man smiled softly, his eyes kind. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "This is the least I can do. You've been doing everything you can for her. Now let's make sure she gets better." The boy's chest tightened as he looked at his mother. She was still so weak, so frail, but for the first time in what felt like forever, there was a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things were going to change. Maybe they wouldn't have to live on the streets anymore. Maybe his mother could get better, and he could stop worrying about what would happen to her. The man stayed for a while, talking to the boy about the best way to get his mother to the hospital. He arranged for a car to pick them up and promised to stay with them throughout the process. The boy was overwhelmed by the man's kindness. He had no idea why the man was doing this for them, but it didn't matter. All that mattered was that his mother would finally get the help she needed. Later that evening, the car arrived. The boy helped his mother into the back seat, and the man accompanied them to the hospital. It was a long, quiet ride, the boy sitting next to his mother, holding her hand tightly. He could feel the weight of everything on his shoulders, the fear, the uncertainty, but also the hope that things were finally going to get better. At the hospital, doctors and nurses rushed to take care of his mother. The boy stayed close by, watching as they examined her and hooked her up to various machines. He didn't understand all the technical terms they used, but he could see that they were doing everything they could to help her. The man stayed by their side the whole time, making sure that everything was taken care of. For the first time in a long time, the boy allowed himself to believe that there was hope. The weight of his worry began to lift, and he found himself feeling something he hadn't felt in months: relief. By the time they left the hospital, his mother was stable. She was still weak, but the doctor said she would recover. The boy felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. They had come so close to losing her, and now, thanks to this stranger's kindness, she was going to be okay. As they sat in the car, heading back to their temporary shelter, the boy turned to the man, his voice full of emotion. "I don't know how to thank you," he said softly. The man smiled, his eyes warm. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Just take care of her. That's all that matters." The boy nodded, his heart full of gratitude. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like there was a chance. Maybe not just for his mother, but for himself as well. The man had given them both something more than medicine or money. He had given them hope. And that, more than anything, was the thing that had been missing all along. The boy didn't know where this story would lead, but he knew one thing for certain. Things were changing, and for the first time in a long time, he could see a future. One where his mother was healthy again, and he wasn't just surviving, but living. The days that followed were filled with small moments of change. His mother was slowly recovering, though it wasn't easy. The boy could see it in the way she moved, the way her breath came more easily now, no longer ragged with each inhale. She was still weak, still fragile, but she was alive. That was the most important thing. The boy couldn't stop himself from feeling a sense of gratitude deep in his heart. His mother had been given a second chance, and he hadn't thought that would be possible just days ago. But even as the boy found a little peace in their new circumstances, a part of him still felt uneasy. He couldn't help but wonder why the man had done so much for them. The stranger had paid for his mother's medical care, arranged for her treatment, and even stayed with them through it all. He had acted with such kindness without asking for anything in return. The boy didn't understand it. It wasn't that he was ungrateful. He was incredibly thankful, but it just didn't make sense. Why would someone like that care about them? They were nobody. A few days later, the man came by to check on them again. His visits had become regular, each one marked by the same kindness and sincerity. He never made the boy or his mother feel like they owed him anything. Instead, he simply came by to make sure they were okay, to see if there was anything else they needed. When the boy opened the door to find the man standing there, a familiar smile on his face, he felt a mixture of gratitude and confusion. The man had offered so much already. Was there more to come? "How's your mom doing?" the man asked gently, stepping into the room. The boy nodded, his voice soft but filled with relief. "She's better. Much better. She still needs rest, but the doctor says she'll make a full recovery." The man smiled. "That's great to hear. I'm glad she's doing better." The boy hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "Thank you for everything. I don't know how to repay you." The man waved a hand dismissively as if the boy's gratitude wasn't necessary. "You don't have to repay me. I just want to make sure you both have what you need." The boy's eyes were filled with uncertainty. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the man's generosity. "But why? Why are you helping us so much?" The man paused, looking at the boy with a thoughtful expression. He didn't seem surprised by the question, as if he had been expecting it. After a moment, he spoke. "I guess I see a lot of myself in you. I wasn't always in the place I am now. I've struggled. I've been in your position feeling like there's no way out, and I had someone help me when I needed it the most. I just wanted to pay it forward." The boy sat quietly for a moment, absorbing the man's words. He couldn't imagine what the man's life had been like, but the sincerity in his voice made it clear that he understood struggle, that he wasn't just some rich stranger passing by. He had been where the boy was, had felt the weight of hopelessness, and now he was doing what he could to help. "I don't know what to say," the boy said, his voice quiet. "You don't have to say anything," the man replied. "Just take care of your mom. That's all that matters." The boy nodded. He didn't know how to express everything he was feeling, but in that moment he realized something. The man wasn't just helping them because he felt sorry for them. He was doing it because he genuinely cared, and that made all the difference. Over the next few weeks, things began to change more than the boy ever imagined. His mother was gaining strength every day. She was no longer lying in bed all the time, though she still had moments when the illness would make her weak. But the boy could see the light returning to her eyes, and that was enough. She was alive, and that was more than he could have hoped for. The man continued to visit regularly, offering help when needed, but never hovering, never making them feel indebted to him. The boy started to realize that the man wasn't just offering temporary assistance. He was showing them how to live again, how to have hope when everything seemed hopeless. One afternoon, as the boy sat by his mother's side, watching her eat something for the first time in days, the man arrived with something new in mind. He sat down beside the boy, his expression serious. "I've been thinking," the man began. "I know you have a gift. You're a talented singer, and I know that you've been using your music to survive, to take care of your mom. But what if I could help you take that further? What if you could make something of your talent, not just for survival, but for yourself?" The boy blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want to help you get the training you need. I want to help you find a way to pursue music as a career. I think you have real potential, and I want to see you reach it." The boy was speechless. He hadn't ever considered that kind of future, hadn't even allowed himself to imagine it. The idea of turning his singing into something more, something that could change his life, that felt like a dream. He had never believed that someone like him, someone with no money, no family, no resources, could ever make it in music. Singing on the streets was just something he did to survive. It had never been anything more. "But I don't have money," the boy said, shaking his head. "I don't know anyone who could teach me or give me the chance to do anything with my music." The man smiled. "That's what I'm here for. I'll help you get the lessons you need. I'll introduce you to the right people. All you have to do is work hard, and I promise you I'll be there to support you." The boy stared at him, his heart racing. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had never imagined that something like this could happen. He had been singing on the streets, just trying to survive. And now this man was offering him a chance, a real chance, to do something with his talent, to make something of himself. "I don't know what to say," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible. "You don't have to say anything," the man replied. "Just know that I'm here to help you. You're not alone anymore." And just like that, the boy's world started to shift again. For the first time in so long, he allowed himself to think beyond survival. He allowed himself to dream. He could imagine himself performing on stage, his voice filling a room. People listening to him not just for pity, but because they wanted to hear his music. The thought felt impossible, but the man's offer made it feel just within reach. Over the next few weeks, the boy began to take voice lessons. It wasn't easy at first. His throat wasn't used to singing for long periods of time, and he had to learn a lot about technique and breathing, but he loved every minute of it. For the first time in ages, he felt like he was working towards something that could change his life for good. The boy's mother, still recovering but much stronger, encouraged him. She smiled when she saw him practicing, her eyes filled with pride. He could see how happy she was to see him pursuing something that made him happy, something that made him feel like he had a future. And with each lesson, the boy grew more confident. He learned not just how to sing better, but how to believe in himself. He had always sung for survival, for his mother, but now he was singing for himself, and it felt different. The man's offer had opened a door that the boy had never thought possible, a door to a new life, one where he wasn't just a homeless boy on the streets, but someone who had a chance to make something of himself. And as the boy's journey continued, he couldn't help but feel that, in some strange way, this stranger's kindness had already given him more than he could have ever hoped for. It had given him hope, the one thing he had almost lost, the one thing that could change everything. The boy didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. His life was no longer defined by survival. He had a chance now, a chance to live, and that made all the difference. The boy's life had shifted in ways he never could have imagined. Each day seemed to bring something new, something different, and it was hard for him to fully process everything that was happening. The voice lessons had been tough at first. His muscles ached from singing longer than he ever had before, and sometimes his throat would feel raw. But he was determined. He didn't want to let this chance slip away. His mother, who had regained some of her strength, encouraged him every step of the way, her smile lighting up her face whenever she saw him practicing. In the mornings, after helping his mother with her daily needs, the boy would head out to the small community center, where his voice lessons were held. The teacher there was kind and patient, understanding that the boy had come from a difficult place, but she never treated him any differently. She didn't pity him. Instead, she treated him as a student, as someone with potential. It was a strange feeling to be treated like this, like he was worthy of attention, like he mattered. But even with the lessons, even with his mother's encouragement, there were still moments when doubt crept in. Sometimes when he stood in front of a mirror after practicing a song, he would see a reflection that didn't seem to match what was inside him. He wasn't sure if he could really make it, if he was good enough to have a future in music. His old life, the one on the streets, felt so distant, but at the same time it seemed to pull at him, reminding him of how hard things had been. Could he really leave all of that behind? Could he truly build something better for himself? One evening, after a particularly difficult lesson, he sat on the curb outside the community center, his guitar resting beside him. The street was quieter than usual, the hum of the city far off in the distance. It felt like a moment to breathe, a moment to think. As he stared out into the night, lost in his thoughts, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Startled, he turned around to find the man, the one who had helped them when everything seemed lost. The man had been a constant presence in his life since that day, but the boy hadn't expected to see him here, of all places. "Mind if I join you?" the man asked, his voice warm and familiar. The boy nodded, shifting over to make room on the curb. "Sure." The man sat down beside him, looking out at the city as well. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was just the kind of silence that felt right, peaceful. "I see you're practicing a lot," the man said after a while, his gaze turning toward the guitar. "How's it going?" The boy hesitated. "It's going okay, I guess. It's hard, though. I don't know if I'm good enough. I mean, what if I'm just fooling myself? The man turned his head and looked at him, his expression thoughtful. "I can see how hard you're working, but you can't let doubt stop you. You're learning, right? That's all anyone can ask for at the start. You've come a long way already. Don't forget that." The boy looked down at the guitar, his fingers nervously tapping the strings. He wanted to believe the man, but a part of him was still unsure. The streets, the struggles, those things had been so real, so close to him. How could he just walk away from them and step into something new, something better? "Sometimes I feel like I'm just pretending," the boy admitted quietly. Like I don't belong in a place like this where people don't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from, or if they'll make it through the night." The man listened carefully, then said, "Everyone starts somewhere, and we all have our battles. It doesn't matter where you came from. It only matters where you're going. You've got a gift. You've got a chance to make something of yourself. But you have to believe in it first." The boy nodded slowly. He wanted to believe it, he did. But the uncertainty lingered like a shadow he couldn't shake. The man, sensing the boy's inner conflict, continued, "It's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel unsure. What matters is that you keep going, even when it feels hard. Don't let the fear stop you." The boy was quiet for a long time, processing the man's words. For some reason, hearing the man speak about fear made him feel less alone. It wasn't just about singing or about his past. It was about life, about taking chances, about facing the unknown and moving forward despite everything. The man stood up, brushing off his pants as he did. "I'll tell you what," he said with a smile. "Why don't you come with me tomorrow? I know a place where you can perform in front of a crowd. It's not a big stage or anything, but it's a good place to practice. You've been working hard, and I think it's time to see what you can do with an audience." The boy looked up at the man, surprised. "Perform? I don't know if I'm ready for that." The man smiled again, that same reassuring smile. "You'll never feel completely ready. That's the point. But you won't know what you're truly capable of until you give it a try. I believe in you." For the first time in a long time, the boy felt a spark of something inside him. Maybe it was excitement, maybe it was hope. Either way, it was enough to push him past the fear that had been holding him back. "Okay," he said, his voice steadier than he expected. "I'll do it." The next evening, the boy stood backstage at a small music venue, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was filled with people. Most of them were there to listen to local artists, to support the community. It wasn't a huge crowd, but to the boy it felt massive. He hadn't performed in front of anyone other than his mother. Now he was going to sing in front of strangers, people he didn't know. The man had arranged everything for him. He had set up the performance, made sure the boy had a spot in the lineup. He hadn't even asked for anything in return. It was just another one of the man's ways of helping him get closer to his dream, even if the boy hadn't fully realized what that dream was yet. The boy stood at the side of the stage, clutching his guitar. His palms were sweaty, his fingers trembling. He couldn't help but feel like everyone was watching him, judging him. But then he remembered the man's words, "You'll never feel completely ready." He took a deep breath and stepped forward when the host called his name. As he walked up to the microphone, the crowd quieted. The boy felt every eye on him, every breath in the room. His heart raced, but he told himself to focus, to remember why he was here. This wasn't about being perfect. It was about sharing his music, about taking a chance. He stood in front of the microphone, adjusted his guitar, and closed his eyes for a moment. When he started to play, his fingers found the strings with a familiarity that calmed him. The music flowed through him and he sang, his voice shaky at first but growing stronger with each line. It was like he was singing for his mother again, for everything he had worked so hard for every person who had ever helped him along the way. He didn't know if the audience was impressed, but he wasn't thinking about them anymore. He was just singing, just feeling the music, just letting it out. By the time the song ended, the room was silent for a beat before a wave of applause filled the space. The boy opened his eyes, surprised. It wasn't a huge crowd, but the sound of their appreciation was enough to make his heart swell with something he hadn't felt in a long time: pride. As he left the stage, the man was there waiting for him, a broad smile on his face. "See? I told you you could do it." The boy smiled, a shy but genuine smile. I didn't think I could, but it felt good. "It should," the man said, "because that's just the beginning. You've got a lot more to share with the world, and I'm going to help you get there." For the first time, the boy believed it. Maybe he wasn't just a boy on the streets anymore. Maybe he was someone with a future, someone who had a chance to make it, and that chance had come from the kindness of a stranger, someone who believed in him before he could even believe in himself. As they left the venue together, the boy couldn't stop thinking about the future. It wasn't perfect and it wouldn't be easy, but it was his, and that was enough for now. The boy's life had taken a turn that he couldn't have predicted, but it wasn't perfect. His journey wasn't a smooth one, but every step forward, no matter how small, felt like a victory. He had found something within himself, a spark he didn't know he had. With each lesson, each performance, and each moment of doubt that he managed to push through, he discovered that he was capable of more than he ever imagined. As the weeks passed, his mother's health continued to improve. She was able to get out of bed more and more, and the smile that had been missing from her face for so long returned, however faint. She watched him sing with pride, her heart swelling each time he picked up his guitar and performed for her, for their small world. Every song felt like a reminder of how far they had come, of the struggles they had faced and survived. The boy had made it through the darkest days of his life. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about living. His mother had her health back, he had a future in music, and for the first time in ages they both had hope. But even as things began to improve, there were still challenges. The boy was still adjusting to his new life. He was still learning to trust that the kindness he had received wasn't just a fleeting thing. People didn't always help, didn't always care, but there were those who did. And the boy couldn't forget that. One day, as he sat outside practicing his guitar, the man showed up again. He had been a steady presence in the boy's life, offering guidance, support, and encouragement at every turn. The boy had learned to trust him, to believe that he truly had their best interests at heart. And yet the boy still had questions. He needed to understand more about why the man had helped them so much. "I've been thinking about something," the boy said as the man sat beside him, the familiar weight of uncertainty in his chest. "You've done so much for me, for my mom. I just don't understand why you're doing all of this. I don't know anyone who would do what you've done for us." The man smiled gently, his eyes softening. "I know it's hard to understand. It's not about what I get in return. It's about seeing someone who deserves a chance, someone who's willing to fight for what they want. You've got a gift, and I've seen that from the start. I just wanted to help you see it too." The boy shook his head, still trying to grasp the full picture. "But why me? I'm just a kid on the streets. There's nothing special about me." The man's expression softened, a look of understanding in his eyes. "That's where you're wrong. You don't see it, but I do. You've got a heart that's stronger than most. I've seen a lot of people in my life, but very few have the kind of determination you do. You don't give up no matter what. That's why I helped." The boy felt a lump rise in his throat. For the first time, he realized that the man didn't see him as just a poor kid, or someone to pity. He saw him for who he truly was, a person with dreams, with a voice, with a future. The boy didn't know what to say. He had never been seen in that way before. He was always just trying to survive, trying to get by, but now someone was telling him that he mattered, that he was worth something. "I don't know how to thank you for all of this," the boy said softly, his voice thick with emotion. The man placed a hand on his shoulder, offering a reassuring squeeze. "You don't have to thank me. Just keep going. That's all I want to see." And with that, the boy realized that he didn't need to understand everything right away. Some things were just meant to be, and some people entered your life at just the right time to make a difference. He didn't have to know why the man had helped him so much, only that it had happened, and that was enough. The boy began to perform more regularly, not just at the small community center, but at various open mics around the city. People began to take notice of him. They heard the raw emotion in his voice, the honesty in every song. His performances weren't polished, but they were real. And that was what people connected with. As his confidence grew, so did his opportunities. The boy was invited to sing at charity events, local festivals, and even a few small concerts. It wasn't fame, not yet, but it was progress. He was no longer just a boy on the streets. He was an artist, someone with something to offer the world. And with each new step, he felt himself growing more into the person he wanted to become. But it wasn't all easy. There were still challenges, still moments when doubt would creep in. He'd been through too much to believe that everything would always go smoothly. But every time he stumbled, he found a way to get back up. His mother, now healthier than she'd been in months, was there to cheer him on, to remind him that he wasn't alone. One evening, After a particularly nerve-wracking performance, the boy found himself walking alone down the street. His guitar case was slung over his back, his feet dragging as he thought about the night's event. He had done well, but he knew he could do better. There was always more to learn, always room to improve. He was still figuring out who he was as an artist and what kind of music he wanted to create. The boy's mind wandered back to the man. Where was he now? The man had been there for him every step of the way, but lately he hadn't seen him as often. The boy wondered if maybe the man had moved on, had helped him and then gone back to his own life. But that thought didn't sit well with him. The man had always said that he was there for him, that he believed in him. And the boy couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than he knew. As if on cue, the man appeared in front of him, stepping out from the shadows. The boy smiled in surprise. "I didn't expect to see you here. I was waiting for you," the man said with a grin. "I've been watching you perform. You've come a long way, kid." The boy felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thanks," he said, his voice soft. "I'm still learning." The man nodded. "That's the thing about life. We're always learning. There's no finish line. Just keep going." The boy smiled, realizing how much the man had taught him, not just about music, but about life. "You've really helped me, more than you know." The man paused for a moment, then said, "I've always believed in you. You've got the potential to do great things. But don't forget, this is your journey now. I've given you the tools. What you do with them is up to you." For the first time, the boy felt a sense of clarity. He had spent so long waiting for something to change, for someone to come and fix everything for him. But now he realized that the change had already happened. He had done it. It wasn't about someone else saving him. It was about him finding the strength to save himself. The boy knew there would still be tough days ahead. There would always be challenges. But now he had the confidence to face them, to keep moving forward, to chase his dreams, and no matter what happened, he would keep singing. It wasn't just a way to survive anymore. It was his passion, his purpose. As the boy walked away from the man, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was his to walk. And for the first time in a long time, he was ready. He was ready to live, ready to